Hello, third grade math friends. We are ready to work on another math lesson today. Today we are working on our lesson 3 problem set. So if you don't have that out yet, you can go ahead and grab that. And it looks just like this. There's lesson 3 at the top. And our I can statement for today says I can partition. And remember, partition is just a fancy word, which means like we can break it up. We can split it up. I can partition a whole into equal parts and identify and count unit fractions. Okay, so I can partition or break up a whole into equal parts. And we know that with fractions, equal is like the biggest thing. We need the pieces to be equal. Yesterday, we practiced identifying shapes that had equal parts versus not equal parts, right? And identify and count unit fractions. So a unit fraction just means like one. So like, is it 1/4 or is it 1/8 or 1/5? Okay, and we'll practice that some more. All right, so name and date on your paper if it's not already there. And just as a reminder as well, just to go over vocabulary, when we're looking at a fraction, the numerator is the number of the fraction on top. Often we're wanting to know how many pieces are shaded in of the whole, and that would be your numerator, the number at the top. The denominator is the total number of pieces, and that is the number down on the bottom. So that's we circled that D for denominator, and we put that arrow down to help us remember that the denominator down, that's the number of pieces, the total number of pieces, and we find that number on the bottom. Okay, so if we read our directions for number 1, it says each shape is a whole divided into equal parts. Okay, so we have a whole divided into equal parts. Name the fractional unit and then count and tell how many of those units are shaded. The first one is done for you. So if we look at the first one here, so we see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 equal pieces. So if we write that fractional unit, it would be fourths. So fractional unit is just like the word that we would use to describe the fraction. So since there's 4 pieces, those would be called fourths. And then on the bottom line, we want to say how many are shaded. And this, we would say 2/4 are shaded. Since there's 2 out of 4 equal pieces that are shaded, it's 2/4 are shaded. All right, let's try this one. So if we look at this second shape right here, how many total pieces are there? So go ahead and count those squares. How many total pieces are there? There's 8, right? So what we would call that as a fractional unit would be eighths. So EIGHTHS. Eighths. So we put that THS on it, right? So 8. So we would call these pieces eighths. Each one would be 1/8. Okay. And then how many of these are shaded? Did you get 5? Good. So we're not going to write this R shaded part, but we will put it in kind of, we'll put 5 and then we'll put 8. And that's our shaded part. And we'll work to make sure that we're spelling these correctly, right? Because all you need to do is copy what's right there. So just make sure that you're copying that spelling correctly, okay? Alrighty. Take a look at the next one. How many total pieces are there here? So these are like long and skinny. I just had to take a quick look to make sure that it was just that amount of pieces. So do you see that there's 3 pieces, right? There's 3 long and skinny pieces. What do we call it if there's 3 equal parts of the whole? What do we call those pieces? Do you remember? Those are called thirds. So if there's 3 equal pieces, we call those pieces thirds. And how many of these pieces are shaded? They all are, right? So we're going to say 3/3. But if they're all shaded like that, that's also equal to 1 whole. So we'll write that. So there's 3/3 shaded. There's 3 out of 3 shaded. That's also equal to 1 whole. And 3/3, just to kind of push it even a little bit further, as a fraction in numbers, we would write that as 3/3 because there's 3 shaded out of a total of 3 pieces. And whenever we see a fraction that looks like this, where the numerator and denominator are the same number, that's always going to be equal to 1 whole. Just a little trick. So that's why I wanted to show you it written in numerical form like that, in number form, because when our numerator and denominator match, that means that that fraction is equal to a whole. And we can see that it's a hole, right? Because the whole thing is shaded in. Good. Do you want to try this one? You want to pause your video and try that one? So again, think about how many total pieces there are, and then write it in partial word form there. So how many total pieces are there here? This is a different looking shape, right? But are the pieces equal in size? They are, right? So there's 2 pieces. So do we call those 2s? We call those halves, right? So, and the spelling, because when we say halves, we don't hear that silent letter there. When we write it, we can think to ourselves, halves, right? And that's not how we say it. But when we write the word halves, it has like that silent L in there, halves. All right. And there's 1 shaded. So here's where this gets a little bit different. We would write that as 1 half. If we're just saying 1, it's half. But when we're talking about more than 1, which would be 2, right? It would be halves, since 2 halves equal a whole. All right. Okay? All right. Number 2 says to circle the shapes that are divided into equal parts. Okay. And then under that, it says write a sentence telling what equal parts means. I want you just to do this part right here on your own. So circle the shapes that are divided into equal parts. So pause your video and look at these 5 shapes and then circle the ones that are divided into equal parts. Okay. So pause your video and do that real quick for me and then pop back. All right. Let's see how we did. Is this triangle divided into equal parts? Yes, because this shape, this side of the triangle looks just like this side of the triangle, right? So I'm going to circle that. How about this shape right here? Are these divided into equal parts? There's 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. Are they all equal? They're not, right? Because if we look, and you might have got tricked by this, hopefully not, this corner is cut off right there. So therefore, this side is not the same as this side. And even from top to bottom, they're different because this is kind of a rounded corner there, and this is a straight corner. So they're not all exactly equal parts. So we're going to cross that off. Okay. Look at this one. Did you circle this square right here? Are they equal parts? Yeah, they do appear to be equal parts, right? There's 3 parts, thirds, and they definitely look like they are equal parts. So I'm going to circle that one. Look at this one, this diamond. A diamond is also called a rhombus. And does this rhombus look like it has equal parts? I'm looking and I see 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. Are they 4 equal parts? Right? Because look at this top part here. This is like a triangle. It's kind of small. And then this part here gets much bigger because it's much longer. And this part here is the same, right? It's longer. And then we have like another small triangle on the bottom. So these parts are not equal in size, right? So we can't say that those have equal pieces. Look at this one. This one looks like a pie. Does this one look like that it's divided into equal parts? Yes. Okay. And then this last part here says to write a sentence telling what equal parts mean. So if they're equal parts, the pieces take up the same amount of space, right? So like this right here takes up the same amount of space as this side of the triangle. These pieces take up the same amount of space, right? These pieces do not take up the same amount of space because this one takes up a lot more space than this one right here, right? These pieces of pie, if we think of it like pie, they're taking up the same amount of space, right? So equal parts means they are the same size or they take up the same space, or the parts take up the same space. Equal parts means they're the same size where the parts take up the same amount of space. Period. So equal parts means they are the same size or the parts take up the same amount of space. Okay, so we can see they're the same size, they're the same shape here, same thing here. And even though sometimes the shapes can look a little bit different, but they are taking up the same amount of space. So that's why I wanted to put that in there as well. Because eventually in our unit, we'll get into looking at fractions where they look different, but they are actually equal parts because they're taking up the same amount of space. Okay. If you need to pause that to finish up your sentence, you can do that. Just make sure that your sentence begins with a capital letter and ends with a period. Alrighty. Number 3 says each shape is one whole. So this is one whole, this is one whole, this is one whole. Estimate to divide each into 4 equal parts. So we want to divide each one of these 3 shapes into 4 equal parts. And then we're going to name the fractional unit below. Okay, so we want to divide this up into 4 equal parts. So if we want 4 equal parts, how many lines would we have? 3, right? But I want to remind you, so here we said for 4 equal parts, if we cut it in half first, this helps us to really get equal pieces. Cut it in half first, just make sure you have a good cut for your half. And then we can cut the halves in half. So if you cut it in half first, and then you can cut your halves in half. Okay. Another way that you could cut that is you could think of it like a present, right? Let me just do a smaller version down here. So if I cut it in half this way, and then I can go this way, like a plus sign. So that looks different, but they're still taking up the same amount of space, right? There's 4 equal parts. For this line right here, I want to break the line up into 4 equal parts. So I'm going to kind of do the same thing I did here. I'm going to cut it in half. Now, can I do this? If I, like for this one, I cut it in half, and then I went this way. I can't do that for this one because it's just a line, right? So since I have it in half, I'm then going to cut my halves in half. And that gives me 4 equal parts, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And a circle we want to cut into 4 equal parts as well. So here's the thing with a circle. So I can't cut my circle into, and let me just show you a version here. Don't do this. I just want to show you. So where we would cut it in half, and then we would cut the halves in half. Why doesn't that work? They're not equal pieces if I do it like that, right? So I can't. A circle is kind of a different story. Remember, a circle you want to make like a pie, okay? So a circle, I always like to tell the kids to put a dot in the middle. All right, so let's cut it straight down first. And if we want, we have 2 halves, and then to cut my halves in half, I can now cut it this way, right, to get that plus sign. There, those like much more equal that way than this way, right? So when we ever have a circle, we want to put the dot in the middle and then cut it like this, okay? You want to cut slices of a pie. The fractional unit. So how much is each one of these pieces? Each one would be what? Each would be 1/4, right? Because we split them all into 4 equal pieces. So we can quickly label those as 1/4 because all of these do equal 1/4. And if I want to label the fractional unit, that means like in words, I would call those pieces fourths. We see fractional unit, we're just using the word that we would use to describe that fraction. Each one of these pieces, they're fourths. All right. When you are set, go ahead and flip it over. All right. So on the back, it says each shape is one whole. Divide and shade to show the given fraction. So this first shape right here, it says 1/2. So we want to split this into 1/2. So to cut it into 1/2, I'm going to make how many lines? 1, right? I'm just going to slice it right in the middle. And we can label each one too. So we'll write 1/2 and 1/2. And it says divide and shade. So you can just kind of lightly shade over one of the pieces to call it 1/2. Okay. 1/6. So again, this 6 right here is telling me how many total pieces. And can I give you a hint to split it up into 6? So to split something up into 6, we can first split it into thirds. Okay, so if I want to split this into thirds, I just need 2 lines, right? Try to make them look pretty, your pieces look pretty equal. And then once you have them cut into thirds, you can cut the thirds in half. Just like that. And then we should count and make sure that we actually have 6 pieces after, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what fraction would you write inside each one of these pieces? 1/6. And then how many of these pieces are we going to shade in? 1 piece, right? Because it's 1/6. And if at any time, boys and girls, as always, you know the drill. If you need to pause the video to get caught up, you can definitely do that, okay? Okay, so our last one we have is 1/3. So this third is telling me that I'm going to split it up into how many parts? 3 equal parts. So it's a circle. So can I just do the lines down the middle like this? So remember we said if it's a circle, we want to make it look like a pie, right? And remember my trick was to put that dot in the middle. And thirds can kind of be tricky. So my hint to you is to like make a Y, make a peace sign. But the Y, make the top of that Y really like fat and spread out. So I'm going to do it like that. And then like that. And then I'm going to make that come down like that. So make the top of your Y like really fat. Okay. And then that third line will just come straight down underneath it. So the top nice and fat and open, and then the bottom straight down like that. Because if you make the top of your Y too skinny, it'll end up looking like this. I'll show you. This is not what we want it to look like. So we're making, okay, it's a Y. There we go. And then we come down like that. Did those look like equal pieces? No way, because this top piece is a lot smaller, right? So that's why when you're doing it thirds with a circle, make that top piece really open and fat, right? Open, wide, and fat. Okay, because we don't want it to look like that. All right, and what fraction are you going to write inside each one of these? 1/3, 1/3, right? And how many are you going to shade? 1. Good job. All righty. You need to pause it and finish up with number 4 you can, and then look at number 5 with me. Number 5 says each shape is one whole, so a hole, a hole, a hole, just like on the front. Estimate to divide each into equal parts. Do not draw fourths. So we don't want to draw fourths because on the front, these are the same shapes, same shapes on the front that we split up into fourths. So we don't want to draw fourths again. You can decide yourself. You can make these into any amount that you want. It just says do not draw fourths. So you can pause your video and I'll just kind of give you an example. So let's say the first one, I'm going to divide this first one up into fifths. So for fifths, how many lines do I need? 4. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm going to put 1/5 in each part. So estimate to divide each whole into equal parts. Do not draw fourths. Divide each whole using a different fractional unit. So since I drew fifths here, the rest of them can't be drawn in fifths. And write the name of the fractional unit on the line below the line, or the line below the shape. So since I made 5 equal parts and I wrote 1/5 in each one, my fractional unit, the word, would be fifths. Okay. There's my example. If you wanted to do that same one, you definitely can, or you could do something different. You want to go ahead and do these in a different way. So I can't do fourths, it said. Do not draw fourths. I'm not going to draw fifths since I already did that, okay? If you want to pause your video, you could do this one same way I did, but do different ones for there, okay? And then we'll see. I'm just going to go ahead and draw 2 other ways, and then you definitely don't have to copy the same way. You can do something completely different. We'll see what you came up with, okay? So as you're drawing yours, I'm going to kind of draw mine too. I'm going to say for my line, I'm going to divide it up into thirds. So for thirds, I'm going to make the 2 lines. Try to make sure my pieces look pretty equal. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And then my fractional unit here would be thirds. And again, you don't have to have thirds there. Just make sure that you have equal pieces there. And I'm thinking for my circle, I want to do 6. I'm going to label that right now because that's what I want to make. So for 6, my trick here with the circle, I'm going to make the Y. And even if you did something different, this is a good tip. Make your Y. So we have the thirds. And then to make those into 6, we cut the thirds in half. Just like that. And then I'll make sure that I have 6 pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I would label each of those pieces as 1, 6. And again, boys and girls, you did not have to have the same ones that I did. This was a free choice. Just make sure that whatever you ended up doing, that your pieces are equal and you put your fractional unit in word form there, okay? All right, and then you can join me on number 6 when you're ready. So number 6 says Charlotte wants to equally share a candy bar with 4 friends. So Charlotte wants to equally share a candy bar with 4 friends. Draw Charlotte's candy bar. I'm going to underline that's my task. Show how she can divide her candy bar so everyone gets an equal share. What fraction of the candy bar does each person receive? Okay, so I'm going to draw my candy bar. So she's sharing her candy bar with 4 friends. So does that mean that I draw 4 parts in my model? Don't be fooled by that. Why would it not just be 4 parts in my candy bar? What am I missing? What are you missing if you think that it's just going to be 4 parts? Don't forget about Charlotte, right? So it's Charlotte's candy bar, and she wants to equally share her candy bar with 4 friends. So there's 4 friends, and there is Charlotte. So how many pieces will you have in your candy bar? 5, right? Because you have your 4 friends plus Charlotte. So we want 5 parts to this candy bar. So if you want 5 parts in the candy bar, how many lines are you going to draw? 4. Good. Go ahead and do that now for me. Work hard to make sure that your pieces look really equal, because remember, that's our biggest thing with fractions, right? Is that we have equal pieces. So I drew, and I'm gonna, my 4 lines, I want to recount and make sure that I have 5 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And this would be Charlotte's, and then she's got 1, 2, 3, 4 friends. So 1, 2, 3, 4 friends. Okay. Draw Charlotte's candy bar. I did that. Show how she can divide her candy bar so everyone gets an equal share. I think we did that. What fraction of the candy bar does each person receive? So what fraction would I write inside each of these pieces here? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what would I write inside each one of those? Did you put 1/5? Yeah, because each person would receive 1 piece out of a total of 5. So 1 is my numerator, and 5 is my denominator because there's 5 total pieces. So 1/5, 1/5, 1/5, 1/5, and 1/5. Okay, so what fraction of the candy bar does each person receive? Each person receives 1, and we'll write it in word form there, 1/5. And there we have it. Okay, so again, taking that candy bar and we're splitting it up using our fractions. So it's definitely something to think about if you're sharing anything, just because we're practicing our fractions. Think about anytime you're sharing something with a friend or with a family member, brother, sister, pizza, candy bar, any kind of candy, try to name it, right, in fractional units of what you are eating or what your friends or family are eating as well, okay? And make sure your parts are equal for sure. All right, so our I can statement today that I can partition a whole into equal parts. We worked hard to make sure our parts were equal and identify and count unit fractions. So we were definitely identifying our fractional units there, right? And our unit fractions, identifying our fractional units there. Okay. Super job today, kiddos. And I will see you tomorrow for some more fractions.